and we're here every Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific time to discuss all matters relating to probate, estates, trusts, whether it's from your own personal perspective of planning your estate and administrating it, or whether you're a professional who is either involved in or wants to be involved in helping people in this matter. And so today, I'm very happy to have a new friend of mine on the show. Mary Jane Charles has an interesting story to tell about how she got involved with this arena. She is the author of Surviving the Business of Dying. And, I want to jump right into it because also, by the way, she is the author of Surviving the Business of Dying companion workbook. And these two together, as we'll talk about, are a great tool for helping you get going in this important field. I just want to mention, to give you an idea of the impact. I'm involved with a situation right now where someone died unexpectedly, and he has, or had, I guess, a business in addition to quite a number of investments. And because he had no will, no trust, no nothing, his lawyer is having to go through a fairly difficult court process, getting someone appointed to run the company now that the man is gone. And in the meantime, his employees have not been able to be paid. And his company has not been able to make distributions to people who rely on this money to live their lives. So this is a case where not only were there significantly negative circumstances for the heirs of the estate, but and by the way, the heir is fine. He's not going to suffer. He's going to have to wait a little bit longer to get his distributions, but his life is not really impacted at all. It's all of the people who were working for or doing business with this man who are having their lives really kind of turned upside down by a lack of estate planning. And so with that as kind of a bit of a background, I'm going to introduce Mary Jane, and thank you so much for coming on the show. And if do you want to include anything else in your introduction that I left out?
Not really. The only thing, well, I'll get into it when I start speaking.
Okay.
So, otherwise, get lost.
Yeah. So when last we talked, you told what I thought was a very interesting story, how you got involved with this. And if you don't mind sharing a little bit of that with our viewers, I think that will really help bring your message home.
Sure. This was, my husband was the precipitating element in this whole saga, shall I say. He was older than I. He was not well. He visited Dr. Google, if you will. And the results of all those tests are on Google. And so I had no idea what was going on, other than I could see him fading in every way. He was pretty sharp, but not anymore. He was in good shape-ish, but not anymore. He was getting thinner and thinner. And I saw some other things going on that I said, you really should, well, I'm not going. And nothing of the norm pertained to him. Right. And so, it's either pick your battles or just push them up a cliff, But I say that because we lived in a rural community overlooking a gorge. So anyway, my humor. I'll try to abstain. In any case, so we moved and we were in a new area, and he wanted to see his partner, loosely held, nothing in writing. I learned later. we were en route. They were going to meet at their office, which was a coffee shop. And so he got in the car. I said, "You're not driving." "I am." He had not slept. I knew that much. So I drove. We got where we were supposed to be. And I looked over. I thought, oh, he might have taken a nap. In fact, he had died in the car seat next to me.
Oh.
And however these things were, I was not shocked. That morning, he was particularly not with it, confused, too slow for his style of thinking. And I said, we have these things called medical directives. You've never filled one out. And then it occurred to me, I had my phone and I had the medical directive for the state of Washington. I said, "May I read this?" And you can nod or shake your head. He said, "Yes. Be still my heart." I got it maybe in 20 minutes because I asked yes or no questions so that he absolutely understood what I was asking. So I did not know that less than 4 hours later, I would be handing my phone to an ER doctor when he came out and said, "Do you have his papers?" And I said, "I don't have any papers, but I have this." And he took my phone. He was at once awed because he'd never quite seen this before. And he loved it because he could see his patient only a few hours before and have a pretty good picture of what I was dealing with. Pardon me. So he took it up to legal or wherever they say this is fine. And the rest is history. There were no further steps taken. And he was allowed to die naturally. And as I said in the book, the chapters evolved by the way life evolved. And that's the first chapter. And the second chapter is called Let the Games Begin. And that's because I didn't have any papers, not a will, not a directive, no partnership papers. And I learned as walking into a village that's already been bombed, you got to look out for the landmines. And they were all over the place. I had to prove who I was every step of the way because we did not have an attorney. And I can promise you, no matter what part of the world you're from, how much money you make, or how many heirs there may be, in this case, there were 3 adult sons and the estate of a 4th who had predeceased him. So there were grandchildren in the mix. And my father had done probate in Brooklyn for a long time, and I never understood why he'd come home late at night. If anyone in my family, he'd start screaming. So things didn't go well that day. And I was looking at this table filled with medical and financial and something real estate. And I just said, "Daddy, I need you now." I wasn't upset. I was livid in that sense. I was furious because this man had been quite the builder and knew the importance of small print. That was the drama. But then you're sitting with a table full of papers, none of which has your name on it. I, at this point, could not have cared less. I just wanted this to be figured out. And I had a good cry. I had a good fit. Cat flew out the door because he didn't know what was going on. And I just decided this was the beginning of a book. Mm-hmm. That was like 3 weeks after it was Memorial Day weekend. What ensued, you do not want to go shopping for an attorney the day after somebody dies. One of the sons thought it best we get in there fast, because the partner could steal things. That grew into another. But to be in an attorney's office less than 24 hours after someone dies, whether they were the love of your life or it was not good, it doesn't matter. It's bizarre, absolutely bizarre. And this gentleman started asking the 2 men in the room questions. And I just sat there watching this ballet, and I'm like, I'm over here. And I lived in Washington. We were in Portland. And he thought he could readily take the case and say the mailbox in Portland. And in my brain, I'm like, well, that's not going to happen. So I just, I don't know, they were mid-stride. I stood up and I said, well, thank you for your time. Now they're all looking at each other. She's leaving. Yeah, she's leaving. Getting the flock out of Dodge as fast as I can. What a group. Come on. It's the timing, the situation, the conversation. So I was leaving. The eldest came after me. I said, under no circumstances am I working with this man. I'll find my own attorney. And secondly, that will be after the funeral, which is next week. So if ever you're in hesitation mode, don't hesitate. Just grab it by the throat. They'll believe anything you say, and they will not come after you. They all went into their rocks where they belonged. So I thought, son of a gun. And so it can be very empowering. Don't let anyone bully you. Then if they, I know, I skipped a step. When we first went into the attorneys, I had the brother-in-law. I never figured out why he was there. And I had the eldest son escorting me. And I looked at both of them. I said, do either of you want to take this on? No, not me. I'm not doing it. So I thought, thanks, guys. So I thought, then that's very freeing, because then you don't have to answer to anyone. You just go with people you trust. And I can't say this enough or any other way. You will have to work with them, or whomever follows in your stead, to govern your business after you can no longer be texted. And so these don't require a life-ending situation. You can slip in the driveway and not be able to talk, or the shower, God forbid a car accident. And we all lived through the pandemic. So that eliminates the old people's papers. No, it could be anybody.
For sure.
And that was the first day.
So, you really got a test of fire there, so to speak. And one of the things you said, I think, is, I just want to highlight for a minute, and that is that, you really kind of have to take the bull by the horns, so to speak, and help people understand that, you were in charge of the process, not them. And the process is there not for the benefit of the lawyers and everybody else, but it's there for the benefit of the heirs, and that they're there to help you achieve your objectives. So
yes. Excuse me. I learned, again, flying by the seat of my pants. I went through 3 attorneys. 2 of whom were women. And both women went to very good schools. They each had their own business. No one could close the deal. I was just like, come on, what's the problem? Well, it wasn't a huge estate. No one was related to anybody. But it did go above what they call that ceiling, anyway, it's a ceiling, to go to probate. So if a little bit of attention had been paid, you would not have needed probate. And in this case, because there was no attorney, I had to find an attorney, if for nothing, to represent, to file the document that would make Mary Jane the personal representative, so that I could close bank accounts and be accepted wherever I go on behalf of, and get everybody their checks. And if I heard another, well, when will that be? What's going on? What's the delay? And I would say, I don't know. I don't know. I still don't know. I replaced that with, I'll get back to you.
Right.
And once they go silent, especially the tone of voice I used, it's really a good phrase. You can really govern its effectiveness through posture and tone. And so they went away. at least for that next 5 minutes, And
Right.
that's all. You got to get your brain back in your body. So if I could leave you with one more pearl, go meet an attorney. Make sure you like them when you do not need them. I have a first name. It's 2 words. No one could quite grasp that. I was Jane. I was Mary. Mary Alice. Mary Lou. And I'm sitting and like, dear God. And so, the little things that matter to you become enormous in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So find a medical directives for everybody. They're online, they're free. Make sure it's for your state because there are tiny differences between states. But in the moment, it could make an enormous time-oriented conversation. And you might not have time. You need attending.
Right. So I was struck going through your book, and I'm just going to. Here it is. So the table of contents. Hopefully people can see it here, but it really goes, step by step. What do you do? And it's very, very simple to follow. So. Talk to us, if you will, a little bit. This seems to me to be designed primarily for someone who, they have a modest estate. They're not going to spend, thousands and thousands of dollars on, estate planning because it's not justified. And yet they don't want to end up in this chaotic situation that you were in. And I'll the same thing here. I mean, if you can see this page, it's just, this is the workbook. You just fill all this in. So talk to us, if you will. How did you develop this? And who really is? Am I correct in in who the target is, or am I off base there? Talk to us about who it's really designed for.
Well, the use of it has grown since it's been out. Initially, it was for those who think estate planning is not for them at all. And they're not going to have that conversation. It has bad mojo around it. Well, I'm here to say it's not about you at all. It's about the people who follow in your footsteps. You do not want them frustrated, angry, others kicking in their anger and angst, and you have nothing to go by. It's like dealing with IKEA on Christmas or holidays without any directions, and everyone's saying, hurry up. I mean, it's ludicrous. So, especially if you think you're pretty smart. You're not very smart if you don't have at least my yellow book. You do need it reviewed by an attorney. Not my book, but anything you put in it. Because it's just too important not to give that gift to your family. I come in at the back end of the will, although my workbook could be a starting point for a will, if you want to do it that way. It's a no-lose proposition. It's simply questions and answers. And as Kevin held up the book, you noticed a blank page. Well, that's in case your answers don't fit in the blanks. It's right upon. And it's strictly for you. It's not a partner thing. People's details as to where you want to be buried and how. And I even give you a spot to start your own eulogy. You might want to name who speaks on your behalf. That's a whole other topic. It wasn't my family because I couldn't say, oh my God, you're, but it was a little shaky. And the beauty of the workbook is you can revisit it. It's not a test. It's not a document, but it could become what they call a primary source in case there's a fuss later on. After the fact, it's written in your hand. And if you make any change, don't put it online. This is a handwritten document. And you could get it notarized. Let your attorney know you have such a thing. And he can reference it for his papers, but do not give him the original because you might have a change of heart on something. So don't scribble, don't write out. Simply put a line through it and initial it. And that way, if someone's got a problem the week after you're gone, whoever becomes your executor, and I made up another position called a first lieutenant, and that has a story. That I said, no, Kevin had a yellow book. Let's look for the yellow book. And it's yellow so you can find it. And it's 8.5 by 11 so you can find it. It's meant to be used. It's not a Thanksgiving topic at the table. It's fairly private in many parts. A first lieutenant is the person with whom you work pretty much daily for the first 3 weeks after somebody dies, especially if you're left without a will. If you have a will, 85% of my book does not pertain to you. And if you finish it up with my workbook, it's basically the everyday nitty-gritty of your life. So no one has to go introduce themselves to a banker who never heard of Kevin because he did everything online. And you have to prove he's dead, God forbid. And you're there and he said, then you could be his mother, and she would have to prove who she was. So this is extra added. I am the first lieutenant. First lieutenant was my son. He was 28, able, personable, and knew all the players. He drove, and he had a daily errand list. So I did not have to go hither and yon. He could get a lot of stuff done where I didn't need to prove who I was. And so one morning he came down. I already had a list ready for him, and he saluted me. So, a loving, wise guy, but I said, come here, Lieutenant, I've got work for you. And that's where that came from. So everybody will have to have someone who you trust to the nth degree. The other position I made up was social media administrator. That's the person who closes all your social media accounts or completes your legacy, however you wish. Of course, they're all different. So you need someone very savvy. They could be 16, and they would love to have a job. They loved you dearly, and they're feeling like they're in left field. Give them a job. Say, I know Kevin's daughter is fabulous at this, and look, there's her name. That's who he wants dealing with this. She'll feel at once loved, important, included, and she's got something to do. And these are really important things. So it's not a matter of being kind. You need dependability in there. And each suggestion came out of, I don't know. I still don't know. So you need an attorney. You need a first lieutenant. And these not be filled in all at once. You'll bump into them and be like, perfect. Have conversations. Again, when you don't need it. Just let those be, that'd be a good selection. And let everybody know that the other person is there. Because this way, in the moment, that's 3 people on your phone that will be called. And that brings me to the phone. Have 5 people's names in your phone. ICE, in case of an emergency. And it would be your doctor, your lawyer, relatives. Have one out of state, because this world, between rogue waves and earthquakes and things, you always need someone out of town because where you live might not have service anymore. So it's all from experience. That's all I can say. And I do know it's from experience because when I was 27, my first husband died of ALS, and there were no final papers. The Schiavo case in Florida had yet to be settled. And that gal was left on life support much longer than she and her husband had spoken about. He couldn't prove that. So she was left on life support. So now that we have papers available, fill them out. And understand that it's the best gift in the world to leave your family.
As I understand it, you're doing some seminars to help people with this topic. Is that correct?
I do. I have classes. I give a monthly class, two classes actually. I have an overview of the workbook so people can understand how to use it, especially if you're trying to help somebody who might need it sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm.
Present it so that it's not, bad news. It's kind of curious. What do you want done with your baseball cards? You don't want them in a garage sale.
Right.
And but calming down that it does get to nitty gritty. I have a list of edits. I'm going to add a whole new section on how do you fix that, because they might have fabulous knowledge on how to fix things and you don't. So it's heartwarming. It can bring out family stories that you've never heard before, trophies, just great stuff in the way of learning, putting down details that you need to know in any case.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the overview. And if people don't want to fill it out all in one shot, I have a workshop. And that's once a month as well. And we get her done. You will have a completed workbook by the end of 90 minutes.
So someone could use this for themselves, right? To get their own situation, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
But it could also be used, say, by maybe a child whose parent is unfortunately approaching that time, and the child realizes the parent hasn't set up anything, and so maybe sitting down with their parent periodically and little by little going through the book to gather the information. Does that work as well?
It does. Every scenario is different. If somebody has really got their heels dug in, and I can think of someone as we speak, and he had a fright only a few weeks ago, and his son still can't get him to even look at it. I said, well, take your copy. I made sure the whole family had a copy. And just everybody start filling out your books. Mm-hmm. It's a little obnoxious, but he'll, get over it and get grumpy and leave one. And he'll go through it. Curiosity is a very strong element, peaceably, or we could do it together. Mm-hmm. Or if you go through and say, oh, I hadn't thought of this. Do you want a military funeral? You were a Marine. It's just a call to the VA. And that is something you can start today. Just get the papers together. It doesn't mean it saves you at least 10 days in the moment, because sometimes they're very busy. And you do not want to wait 10 more days. People want to get this, So military funerals, it's a call to the VA. Just get your papers and put them in freezer bags and keep them in an envelope wherever you keep the book. The book should be private, but accessible. Talking about accessibility, the medical directive is not intended to be private. In the moment, they have to be ready to be grabbed. So those definitely put on the side of the refrigerator, and put copies in your night table, your glove compartment, because that's the first thing the EMTs look for. And it's the first thing that the medical team at the hospital asks for. And if not, then they go on with their routine. But if they have your instructions tucked into your clothes upon arrival, that's the way they will go.
Got it. Well, the time zoomed by. Our time is already up. So I just want to stress a couple of things. One is that I'm going to put a link to Mary Jane's website. I almost flubbed myself. I'm going to put a link up to Mary Jane's website, where not only can you get her books, but you can also see her schedule of the workshops that she does, and you can contact her with questions. And I hope that you all saw the down earth practicality of everything that Mary Jane was talking about, because in the end, that's really what this is about. We can talk theory all we want, but when that time comes that this information is needed, theory flies out the door, because we're talking about real people's lives. We're talking about taking care of someone who has passed and left others behind who are grappling with their emotions, at the same time that there's this big sort of uncertainty looming before them. And to be able to fall back on the knowledge that there was some preparation done to make it easier, I think gives people a lot of comfort. Going back to the situation, one sec. Going back to the situation I mentioned at the beginning, one of the hardest things that the folks involved in it are dealing with is, especially the people working at the company, is this sense that they were sort of cut loose to just fumble around trying to figure all this out. And it's been very disorienting for them. And in fact, one of them, the funeral was on for the man was on Thursday, and I told them, I said, you know what, if you don't want to come in on Friday, don't come in. I mean, this is hard, and unfortunately, it's not going to get easier as we go forward. So taking care of yourself as a person is as important as taking care of any of the financial issues and these other things. I said, if you don't come into the office tomorrow, you know what? The work is still going to be there on Monday. It's not going to run away from you. So,
and for those in charge, your business and the people who work for you, in many instances, are as dear, if not dearer, than your own family. You don't want them to flounder. You know their children, their animals, their troubles, their this. And you do have to take care of people. And you can't not just let it slide. And just to your point of you don't know when it's going to happen quickly. I have a friend, but she was a client. She lives in Saskatchewan, and she has MS, and her husband takes very, very good care of her. 3 weeks ago, she was chatting with him. He had just lifted her from the bed to the wheelchair, and she turned around, and he was having a stroke.
Oh my gosh.
And she could see her phone. Somehow she called 911. They came, neighbors came. It's rural, but they all knew something was going down. They took care of her. He went off. He was in bad shape for 48 hours, but he's with us and flying through rehab. Mm-hmm. Her sons came, and she had her book filled out. Mm-hmm. And they were able to grab the book, do the banking, because it was the first week or two of the year, so all kinds of monies were coming and going. She couldn't stop thinking. So it works.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Mary Jane, thank you so much for coming and talking with us today. I read your books when you sent them to me, and thank you, by the way, for sending them to me. They are just marvelous. They are a fantastic tool. And I would, even if you have a very complex estate, I encourage you to get Mary Jane's books and work through them so that as you sit down with your various advisors, you'll already have compiled a lot of the information that you'll need to answer the kind of questions that they're going to have for you as they seek to help you put together, what will be probably a complex estate plan with a lot of moving parts. So I think the hardest part in all of this is getting started with it. And Mary Jane's tools they're just so well thought out. They're so people focused. You probably have never heard me advocate for a book so much on any show that I've ever done. These are such impressive resources. I really can't recommend them highly enough. So Mary Jane, thank you so much again for coming on and talking with us today. I'm going to just wrap up the show here real quick, and if you'll hang tight after we go offline, we can say goodbye.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So, folks, that's our show for today. I just want to remind you, tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific time is my show, Business Lessons from the Military. And what is our topic? I've forgotten what our topic is, but I was working on it yesterday, so I think you're going to find it interesting. And then on Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time is business lesson. I'm sorry, is people making money, and we'll spend our time together on those 2 days. Hopefully, look forward to it. And then, of course, 1 week from today, we'll be back for the next edition of Trusts and Estates Weekly. So thanks again for joining us. Do recommend us to a friend, especially this particular show. It'll be posted on our YouTube channel. And if you've got someone who's kind of reticent about engaging in this issue, send them the link to this show and say, hey, just take a watch of this. This woman, Mary Jane, she not only has great advice, she's lived through the whole process. And I think that will really resonate with your friend. You'll be doing them a very great kindness in making the introduction. Yeah.
Just quickly, if you don't want to deal with Amazon, mjcauthor.com. Those are my books. I have the books here at home. I can send them to you today.
Okay, and I'm going to put that link in the show notes as well. So as soon as this posts on our YouTube channel, I always update the notes. You'll see that link there. So yeah, you can contact Mary Jane directly and get your copy. So folks, wishing you a wonderful rest of the day, and signing off as I always do. Marie, you're my belle. Take care, all.